talk about a person that's known variously, aka Aunt Elva, Great Grandma Elva, Grandma Elva, but mostly just Mom to the four of us. And so we're here to celebrate her life and think about the things she's done and talk about our memories. Well, 22 years ago, our dad Harold died, and at his ceremony there was much comment about what a quiet man he was. Didn't say much, very quiet. Well, all families need a balance, and Mom provided that balance because she could talk and she did. And so that's one of my memories of her, was her very vociferous character. The other thing that I remember about Mom is her childlike enthusiasm for a lot of things, but particularly ice cream, fresh fruit that was grown mostly in Ohio. It had to be from Ohio. And things like strawberries and peaches. Very enthusiastic about that. And then later in her life, she became enthusiastic about road racing and was running 5Ks in her 80s and I think 90s. I think to top it off, her signature enthusiastic thing was her 85th birthday when she was parasailing over Acapulco Bay.
We have a picture
From a raft.
From a raft, picture of it there. And I can recall Arthur and Sherry and Linda, Rich, we were all there, Charlene, and we're standing on the shore of Acapulco Bay, peering up into the sky, and there's our Mom. She's a bare speck, really high and going fast, and it was kind of remarkable. So then when she landed, we kind of huddled around her and said, "Mom, how was it?" She said, "It wasn't high enough, it wasn't far enough." And that was Mom. Mom was very caring and particularly protective about her immediate family, and I do remember that about her. She was also very generous to me. Susan and I were, in 1971, had never traveled out of the continent of North America, and we were burning and itching to travel in Europe. And so we're trying to figure out how to do that. We had a daughter, Julie, that was 6, and Eric and Brett were 3. And so I called Mom and said, "Mom, here's what we'd like to do. Can we have you take care of Eric and Brett for a while?" She said, "What's a while?" I said, "About 5 weeks." And she said, "Let me think." So I said, "I'll call you back." So she called a little bit later. She said, "I thought about it, and I'll do that." And so we were just delighted. And so we took off, had a tremendous adventure, our first trip to Europe, had a great time. And we talked Sue's mom and dad, Frosty and Jane, to take care of our daughter Julie, who was 6. So they were all back in Ohio at that time with the grandparents for quite a while. Well, we had a wonderful time, got back. Mom looked thinner. And I said, "Mom, how was it?" She said, "Well, it was not easy. And I'd lost 12 pounds in that 5 weeks, so it's a great dietary program." So that was her generosity that I can recall too. And another thing I remember, I think I was 5 or 6 maybe, and excuse me, I'm getting a little emotional about this, but I was out playing in our street on Norman Avenue in Avon Lake, and I had some new friends, and they were teaching me some new words. And I came in, Mom was scrubbing our floor she had a pail of water and Fell's naphtha soap and a scrub brush, and she was scrubbing the floor, and we got into a disagreement. And I tried some of the new words, and within about 2 seconds I had a bar of soap in my mouth and bubbles coming out of my nose. And I learned 3 things from that. 1, Mom was quick. Number 2, my vocabulary probably wasn't appropriate and had to be changed. And number 3 was never get into a disagreement with Mom when she's scrubbing the floor. Don't do it. So that's a memory. And then about that time, it was 1945, early May. Her dad had died on May 2nd in 1945, and the war was winding down. And we still had blackouts and air raid drills. And I can recall vividly Mom getting dressed for her dad's funeral, and we couldn't use lights, so she was in the closet with a painted out light bulb, changing into her dark clothes to go to her dad's funeral. And I'll talk about that a little bit later when we're all done here. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Rich and have him say a few words.
I do remember my early childhood. I was born 3 years after Gary, and I was a piece of cake compared to him, believe me. He was a terror.
Still true.
I think Mom was really happy to have me. But I remember riding my bicycle down Norman Avenue, and it didn't matter if their cars were there or not. I just kept riding along. We were talking about Mom's desire to do crazy things, and a couple that you may not know about is once Neil arranged for her to go up in a glider over the desert, and she loved that. And the other thing, well, she wanted to go up in a hot air balloon, also out in the Palm Springs area, and Dad didn't want to go, and so I went with her, and the heat from the hot air balloon just about singed my hair off. That's why I don't have. All in all, I think she had a very fulfilling life. It did what she wanted to do, and I don't think you can ask for anything more than that. The woman that was helping with this said, "Oh, you'll want these," and I said, "What are these?" And this one says, Daffodils for the Dining Room by Elva Korsgaard, March 2011. And this one is Avon Lake, Ohio by Elva Korsgaard. And I said to this woman, I said, "My mother has no artistic ability." I said, I'm probably the only person that has less artistic ability than she does. But they explained to me that it's called Art Without Borders, and it's a program for people with Alzheimer's, dementia, and also for kids that are having that kind of problem, but similar things. And it's a therapy, because I said, my mom did not paint that. And she said, "Yes, she did." And then I looked up online the Artists Without Borders, and they work backwards. Their therapy is it makes everybody feel more comfortable and everything, but they do eventually paint their own pictures.
So this is a letter that I've written to Mom, to Elva. Dear Mom, I wasn't around during your early years, coming on the scene 6 years after Linda, or as your son Rich delights in telling everyone, the caboose child. One of my early memories with you, Mom, is being snug, tucked in between you and Dad in the front seat of a big Buick, while Linda, Gary, and Rich, formerly Dick, were in the back. No seat belts then, only your arm that shot out to hold me back when Dad pumped the brakes unexpectedly. We might have been going to the Dairy Queen or as far as Deutschlander's farm, but the baby rode in front. You were there when I walked home from Westerly, my elementary school, and drove the car with millions of kids piled in the Buick to swimming lessons in Westlake. You got me interested in acting when you enrolled me in a summer theater program. I remember your pride and my excitement when I achieved the high-ranking role of head tiger lily in that summer's production of Alice in Wonderland. I think I was 7. You taught me the importance of being on time, whether it was for school or for summer jobs. Later in college years, when I had a job in a clothing store and arrived late and looking rather ragtag, you really let me know that that was not on. Your worry and anxiety drove Dad crazy during my teenage years. If I were so much as a few minutes late, I would see the lights on at 305 Bassett and your worried face pressed up against the glass of the side door. Sadly, I inherited this madness, as Alex can attest. Somehow you taught me to drive, being far more patient than Dad. I couldn't even do that for my own kid. Your regret over the purchase of just about anything has become a family joke. Should have bought eights is a refrain that is heard in our home, stemming from a childhood incident when a dress of mine should have been bought bigger, and you just couldn't let it go. Throughout my life, when you reacted to situations in an impolitic manner, somehow you always circled back with a more thoughtful and measured approach. But your hair-trigger temper never ceased to amaze me, sometimes fueled by nothing other than a dispute over a word in a heated Scrabble game, zit being one. As I grew up, your genuine happiness for my accomplishments and my joys made it fun to share or brag. You embraced Alex and Arthur as they came on the scene, and then it was time to offer you what Arthur and I could, new locations and experiences. It was great fun to have you visit New York, Toronto, and the best, Brazil. As both of us aged, it was my turn to brag. White water rafting with Linda, hot air ballooning with Rich, and parasailing at 85 in Mexico, and finally beating your nemesis in a foot race at 90. In writing to you, there were so many flashes of our times together that were significant. A lifetime of them. And Mom, you had a long one. One filled with a loving family and friends, hard times and good times. I know you did your best, and I also know no one can ever quite love one like a mother. Thanks for being mine. I'll miss you. Sorry. I know this is all about Mom, but I would really like to say how important Rich and Charlene's role have been throughout Mom's life, and particularly when they suggested she leave Ohio and come to sunny California. I think some of her really happy single years were at Leisure World, which would not have happened if Rich and Charlene hadn't suggested. They also, when they retired, invited her or suggested that she move to San Luis Obispo, they have been on the front lines with all her health problems, whether they have they got the call at 3 o'clock in the morning or when she had her dementia. And I don't think anyone really knows what a strain that is or how difficult. And I really, really, from the bottom of my heart, I can't thank you enough for that. Because
Here.
I'm definitely not a Korsgaard. And those of you who know me at all know that one of my favorite pastimes is to engage in mental torture. And Elva was certainly a very susceptible to that. But, in spite of it all, she always retained her good nature, and she always, in the end, had to admit that I was her favorite son-in-law. And she did. As her only. And but Sherry mentioned in passing, because we focused a lot on her athletic prowess, as the captain of the basketball team, or the swimming, or the marathons, or the parasailing. But I thought that my fondest memory was when she visited us in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and she came in the height of summer. It was over a Christmas holiday, and we were blessed with very beautiful weather. She came by herself, from Ohio at that time, with changes of planes. She made it to Sao Paulo, and there you saw Elva the good sport, but she was also, it was a little bit like Auntie May, in that she was the elegant older woman, and we were fortunate. We were invited to a dinner party with some of our friends, and there were many gentlemen there, and Elva was the perfect lady. Even I remember at this dinner party where they were serving the Brazilian national drink caipirinhas, and she was partaking of the caipirinhas like she was a Brazilian, and then ultimately she said to me, she asked me to get her food from the buffet because she knew she couldn't stand up. But she still looked every inch the perfect lady as at the dinner party, and then we went to the beach in Brazil, and we just had a wonderful time, and then we went to a farm they call a fazenda, where there were people from, not only from Brazil, but there was a Swedish couple that we knew, and she had her parents there who were of Elva's generation. And of course, we had the Scandinavian bonding and the drinking of aquavit and all of that stuff. And I remember very distinctly we had a New Year's Eve in Brazil. The tradition is everyone dresses in white, and we had a bonfire outside in the coffee roasting area of this particular farm, and she was elegant and dancing with the gentlemen who were there, and I think it was a wonderful experience for her, but it was so nice for us to be able to see Elva as Auntie May in this visit to Brazil. So it was just terrific, and my fondest memory ever.
I have to share a story about Elva, and she was with Betty and Lou. Betty was her sister, and we had talked about, I was into climbing at this point, and Mount San Jacinto was pretty close. So somehow we kind of got in our minds that we're going to climb Mount San Jacinto. So, and of course Elva was game, and Betty was game, and so was Lou, and they're all now in their 80s. I'm pretty sure. Would that be right?
Oh yeah. No, they were in their late years.
So here we go. We go up the tram in Palm Springs, and we get up to the top of Mount San Jacinto, and we start. Now we're at roughly 10,000 feet. No, about 9,000 feet. So it's pretty high, and so we're climbing and having a great time, and we're heading back, and we have to get the tram and go back down. And of course, there's another climb back up the hill. Well, Elva's competitiveness all of a sudden begins to show. And so now the next thing I know, Elva and Betty are taking off and leaving Lou and me behind. So
I was there too. I was there too.
Were you there?
Yeah.
Oh, good. And is this a true story?
Yes.
And away they went.
If it isn't, I'll fix it.
And I, to this day, I can't tell you who was first, but I can tell you that what you said about Elva is very, very true. She was a very competitive person. But that's not really what I remember as. Because what I remember is the very first time when Nancy and I were dating, and I met the Korsgaard family. And Elva had such a warmness about her. I mean, I hadn't been there 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and I felt like I was really welcomed into the family. I mean, it was such a great feeling. And every time I was ever with Elva, I always had that same feeling, that I was just welcome, part of the Korsgaard family.
That's only
And
because
those
you were-
genes always, you can see, it's flowed over to each of you and her children and families.
That's only because you were attached to a favorite.
Maybe that's it.
That's right.
End of story.
Well, and they didn't quite finish. Dick, you didn't quite finish the story about Elva's fall. She was down in her leisure village, and she had another woman younger than her who thought that she was faster. And Elva was running this race. It was the Flojo race. And she said, I went down shortly after this, and she said, Nancy, you should have seen that race. She said, I was doing really well. I was walking fast and doing some running and walking fast. And she said, then I had to know where my competitor was. And I turned around and tripped. And she said, and I fell on the ground and I lay there and I thought, oh, poor Elva, she's not going to win this race. And then she thought, oh, but I could still be second. And so she got up and limped to the finish. It was only like 150 feet to the finish, you know, and she said, but I could have done it. I know I could have done it. And it was just this wonderful spirit, you know. Most of you, I don't know if most of you know, we older people know, but
Older?
Elva, you too. Elva got very bad asthma as a young girl, and the family was not rich at all. They really didn't have anything, but they went to Florida with Elva because the doctor said she would not survive another winter without being in a warm place. So this family of three, you know, the children and the three children and the parents went to Florida and put up 2 tents at what is now Fort Lauderdale. And they put up 1 tent that they lived in and 1 tent for cooking. And they lived on the beach with nothing. No car, no electricity, no anything. They just lived on the beach. And so I did a book on the family, the Tominics. And Dick and Gary have one. But in there is a whole series of pictures of these little kids on the beach. And it is absolutely fascinating because there was only one other family on that whole area. And he was a Coast Guard person. And there they spent the whole winter on the beach with nothing.
And they took
but
the
2
train
tents.
down.
And yeah, I mean, an incredible story, but for Elva, you know, and they just had a wonderful time. All the little people on the beach, you know, it was marvelous. So she had a life that spanned a lot.
One sad thing about the day for Charlene and I, and that is that all of you that have visited us over the years that Mom has lived near us, we're afraid you're not going to come anymore.
Not going to
That
happen.
was-
Are you afraid or relieved?
We're afraid that we're going to not have the contact that we have had over the past 14 years.
Well, Beats and I'll come.
Okay.
We'll be here.
But,
Charlene, may I have your opinion on
Well,
that?
I want to add to that because Brett and I were talking too, and this is a most fabulous group of folks that we have in this room. And it is a shame that we only get together on occasions such as death, and being the next generation, I don't want to wait around. So I think we all need to work real hard at staying connected and have some gatherings, and even if we all don't quite fit in, we are in fact kith and kin. So
Oh, hey.
I am
You are a
hoping.
poet.
I am a
That's
poet.
very nicely said.
so
Very nice.
let us have some gatherings.